oftentimes we may end up settling for something less. Or like I said, then there's these past experience that taught us that we're not good enough. We can't do this. It's going to be hard, that, you don't have the support. And why would you do that? Get a real job, things like that. It's, the things from within ourselves, but then also these outside influences as well, like, the family and friends, they don't really believe in you, or they doubt you, or they don't think that you can actually do it. And all of those things, it influences us. But most important is really our own assumptions of what is possible for us, what we can do, and are we really good enough to do this? Even the past experience that we had, like when you got burned, once, and you got burned maybe twice, you're not going to touch the hot stove again, right? If we're using the hot stove example. And it's the same thing with, putting ourselves out there or trying to go after our dreams.
Well, that's a good way to start it out, zen and grounded. So before we get too far into this, can you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and anything that you want to share about yourself or your career, your business, and we can preface the conversation with that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Now, my name is Kay Sanders. I'm a spiritual mentor. I also consider myself a soul alchemist because over the years of my journey, I really dove deep into the inner work, shadow work, doing all this inner transformation. And over the last 2 years, this whole name of soul alchemy really came about because it's really about transforming from the inside out, using the shadow aspects, using the things, the challenges in your life to really grow from that, to transform from that. So now I really have this great honor and pleasure to work with awakening souls, to really help them break free from the limitations, the lack, the doubts, and all of that, the things that are really holding them back. Because we all have so many beautiful dreams, but oftentimes we're holding ourselves back, talking ourselves out of it, or don't really believe that it's really possible. And we never really get to experience the life that we truly would love to live. So now my purpose, my journey is really about helping awakening souls break through that. Now, I'm actually originally from Germany, and I've been here in the States now for almost 20 years. And my journey has been quite bumpy, quite challenging, but I knew that I had to go through that in order to really learn what I need to learn to now help other people. So I've had to go through the trenches of deep shadow work and hitting rock bottom. Like a few years ago, like in 2019, I almost lost everything because I was very stubborn and very hard-headed, and this whole surrendering and trusting the universe and all of that, yeah, that didn't really work for me, right? So I really had to learn the hard way to really let go, to surrender, to using my own challenges as opportunities for immense growth, transformation, and really changing my life around, learning how to really manifest in alignment rather than, going against whatever I want to create and stuff like that. But yeah, so basically right now I also have a YouTube channel where I share weekly videos, light language activations. And my goal is really to now help help people understand that they can have anything and everything that they want in their life, that they can be the conscious creator of their own reality. So my purpose now, I received the guidance earlier this year, is that now I need to get out more to share, to introduce people to the whole concept of soul alchemy, that you can truly be the conscious creator of your own reality, that you can have anything and everything that you want. And then if there's something in your life that you don't like, you can make a change, you can make a shift, and really introducing people to shadow work and things like that. So that's why now I'm more on, podcasts and things like that. So I'm super excited that I get to be here and share my message with your audience.
So there's a lot there that I want to touch on, man. There's a lot to get into. I want to backtrack kind of to something that you said there, which was there's a lot of things that are holding a lot of us back. And I think an interesting thing that I would be sort of curious about would be, what do you think those things are? Like just in your experience, the people that you kind of talk to, what do you think is there like a common thing? Is there like a set of common things? I mean, what is it that's really holding us back, do you think, from sort of being our best? This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually like doubt, limiting
Hmm.
beliefs, like I can't do this, I'm not good enough. I mean, who am I to do this kind of stuff, right? Or, also not really feeling worthy and deserving to create the life that we want or to have what we want. A lot of people, they may even feel, they're afraid of the consequences that come with creating the life that they want. Because let's say you want to be, highly successful or financially wealthy. Yeah, the good consequences is that you have that, you get to live that life. But then also the bad consequences, well, your life is going to change. The life that you know that you're comfortable with right now, that is comfortable to you, will cease to exist because you're moving into a completely different timeline. You're moving into a completely different way of going about life. You will be different. And there's so many fears around that and really putting yourself out there. And especially like, in the industry, like the spiritual industry, I have seen that as well. Or just the like, trying to make an impact in the world, like even the coaching industry. It's like, we got to put ourselves out there. So there's an also the fear of being seen, that even the fear of asking for what we want, the fear of going after what we want. Oftentimes we may end up settling for something less. Or like I said, then there's these past experience that taught us that we're not good enough. We can't do this. It's going to be hard. That, you don't have the support. And why would you do that? Get a real job. Things like that. It's, the things from within ourselves, but then also these outside influences as well, like, the family and friends, they don't really believe in you, or they doubt you, or they don't think that you can actually do it. And all of those things, it influences us. But most importantly, it's really our own assumptions of what is possible for us, what we can do, and are we really good enough to do this?
Yeah.
Even the past experience that we had, like when you got burned, once, and you got burned maybe twice, you're not going to touch the hot stove again, right? If we're using the hot stove example. And it's the same thing with, putting ourselves out there or trying to go after our dreams. Or when we're talking about the manifestation practice, I'm pretty sure you've learned about different, law of attraction and visualization and all these practices. But one thing that is often missing also with these practices is, in order to have what you want, you also have to do the inner work. You can't just do, visualization and scripting and using affirmations to go after what you want or to create a life that you want if you don't work with the stuff that's deep beneath the surface. Because we have these unconscious fears and doubts and past experiences and the program that, that shaped us, that became our truth, that are in direct conflict with the thing that we want to manifest. So if you don't have yet what you want, it's not because that you're not good enough or you can't have it. It's because there's something deep within you, whether it's the fear, the doubt, or anything like that, that is in direct conflict with you having what you want. So when it comes to creating the life that we want, we have to do the inner work. We have to tackle what's really holding us back. And here I'm not saying, okay, spend, all your life or weeks or a month on just doing this shadow work or inner work, but it's about, as you're moving forward, as you're trying to create the life that you want, become aware of when doubt kicks in, when that little voice in your head tells you that, oh, you shouldn't do that, or no, it's not the right time, and no, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, and it's going to be hard. Become aware of that, and then, okay, there's something there that's trying to hold me back. Cool. Let's tune into that. Let's figure out, well, why is this happening? What am I feeling? What is coming to the surface? Working through that as you then continue moving forward to really also embody the version of you who has what you want. But oftentimes it's those unconscious fears and doubts that are really in direct conflict of us having what we want. And that's where we can't create the life that we want.
Hmm. I want to touch on something that you said, which was you mentioned limiting beliefs. And I think that the crazy thing about these beliefs, man, is I think you even said this, that a lot of times we take these beliefs on as our own. We believe something about ourselves. A lot of times they were given to us from an outside source, an institution or an education system, whatever it might be, siblings and parents sometimes, unfortunately. But I think that it's just a pretty profound thing to realize that a lot of the things that you believe about yourself is not even really something that you actually believe about yourself. It's something that somebody else sort of taught you to believe about yourself. And I think it's one thing for us to think whatever we think about ourselves, whether we're not, I think you mentioned doubt earlier, being one of the things that hold us back. But that's sort of one thing. But like, okay, that's us limiting ourselves for whatever reason. Imagine if we're limited by somebody else's belief of us, because that's a belief that's instilled in us that we're not even aware that we have. You know, I mean, I think this is a question that I ask people a lot in the entrepreneurship space. If you try to do a thing and it fails, but it's something that you really thought you could do, if you really wanted to do it, you will probably be okay because you were able to learn through that. However, if you do something that somebody else says you should or should not do, and you listen to that advice and you fail because of that, it's probably going to be much more difficult for you to accept that failure because you listen to an outside source. So I think the same thing is true, that like with these limiting beliefs, if we believe something about ourselves that was something that was given to us, that's not even something we actually believe, that really a lot of times has no justification whatsoever. Like these things, like if you really ask yourself, like whatever the thing is that you believe about yourself, and if you try to come up with some sort of a logic about it, you may find it difficult to do so. Like, if you because like a lot of times when we feel these things, we feel it the first time before we do the thing. So if you want to start a business, if you want to do something different with your career, well, you've never done the thing. So where does the fear come in that you're going to fail? Because there's no logic there for that. I mean, you've never done it. So if we're looking at statistics, it's never happened. So it's like a clean slate. But
Exactly.
to go back to the limiting beliefs, there's I don't know, just I think a question to ask ourselves is how would we feel if we were limited by somebody else's belief about what's possible for us? I think that's a very important question.
hmm Well, yeah, because I mean, our family, our friends, they have their own set of beliefs, their own kind of limitations. And when you come at it and like, hey, I have this great idea, this feels so exciting. I want to do this. And they're like, no, it's not the right time. The economy is bad. You shouldn't do this. And you made them believe them. But that creates a misalignment though. Because oftentimes when we're receiving these ideas, these insights, and it feels so exciting, right?
Mhm.
That's like, maybe not even share it with anyone close to you, because they may, you call them dream crushes, right? They're trying to, because they're basing their assumption based on their own beliefs, but they're not yours. But then if you take on their beliefs, that you believe everything that they say, like exactly the same thing as like with all these gurus out there that teach business and all these different things. I mean, I used to take so many business courses of how to grow a business and things like that. But a lot of these things, I'm like, that's not really me. I don't really feel
Mhm.
aligned with it. But I was like, well, I gotta push through. I just gotta do it because, well, this guru said, this expert said that this is how you grow a business. So I gotta do it in just that way. But I was so misaligned to it that I actually got in my own way. And I caused myself to fail, it didn't work out. So I was pretty crushed because, like, well, I mean, I paid so much money, to take this course or to follow this strategy, and it didn't work. And then I had to realize that I gotta find my own way of how I feel called to go about things. And I always tell my clients as well. So I like to be somewhat of the rebel, right? I don't follow a specific strategy. I take it with a grain of salt, because everything that you hear from other people, yes, there might be some truth to it, maybe just a tiny little bit, right? And it gives you the opportunity to then look at, okay, do I want to believe what they say? Do I want to go by what they say in exactly the same way? Or do I maybe want to take something from that, something that resonates with me, but then forge my own way? Because maybe something that they said has some tiny little piece of that really feels in alignment, then you may want to go about it in a different way. Right?
Hmm.
So let's say, starting a business or even any kind of strategy, maybe there's something that resonates. Okay, you can take that, but then find your own way. And when you take on other people's beliefs, like you mentioned, like when you then fail, then it's a lot harder to deal with than when you do it because you really feel called to do something. And then I wouldn't call it failure. It's more feedback, because, like you said, when you start a business, well, you don't know how to grow a business. So you have to make mistakes, what some people call failure, for one to realize, well, this is actually not what I wanted, or in that way, it's not what I wanted. Or, okay, cool. Well, maybe what can I do to make it different? Or it also then gives you the opportunity to really commit even more. Like, I'm pretty sure when you started your podcast, it wasn't a huge success right out the gate. You probably had failures too. You probably had setbacks, but with each setback, it also gave you the opportunity to recommit to recommit to your path. Because when we start something that really feels so deeply aligned, yes, there are going to be the setbacks. We have to face our fears. We have to face our, limiting beliefs and stuff like that. But it always then gives us the opportunity to then recommit. And that's why when it comes to also with manifestation, we don't manifest everything like, right away. There's always a delay because it always gives us the opportunity to just decide, is this really what I want? So let's say you start a podcast and right out the gate, you're becoming highly successful. And then after a month or like 6 months, like, I really don't like that. So you didn't have the success, you have the platform, but then you kind of feel obligated to continue because what you became successful. So you got to keep going. But if you have these little failures in the beginning, you also learn to overcome your own fear of, being public, showing your face, you being seen, being heard. It helps you to grow. It always gives you the opportunity, like, okay, I'm going to recommit. Every time you're having somewhat of a setback, I'm going to recommit. I'm going to recommit. I'm also learning a lot about myself. I'm also realizing a lot about myself. I can, overcome a lot of stuff that has been holding me back. I'm growing because of the challenges. Like a lot of people, when something happens, like, ooh, that's scary, I'm not going to do that. Well, you don't grow when you not do it, when you give up. You grow when you push through, when you work through these things, when you continue, when you keep recommitting to your path, when you keep recommitting to creating the life that you want. But then the failure or so-called failures, I find are not as challenging when you decide to do something than if someone else told you this is what you should do and this is how you should do it and things like that. Because then it's also like, well, they told me to do it. So now I'm like totally bummed out because, well, I followed their guidance. Right.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot there, but yeah, I don't know, man. I want to close this thing on these limiting beliefs before we move on from this because I want to stress the importance of your life being directed in a direction that you don't even believe that you don't even believe the things that are directing it. I think I don't know. That's just something that I like when I hear that that's possible for us to be limited by that. I think that that's sort of depressing for me to me, and it's sort of I don't know, it's sort of challenging to me. You mentioned shadow work, and I want to get into that with you because we're talking about a lot of different things. You're going a lot of different directions, but there's certain things that I want to sort of narrow down on. The limiting beliefs, I think I guess maybe we kind of covered that. But the shadow work, do you work with people on shadow work?
Yeah.
Okay.
And here to touch on what you just said, like, yes, it's depressing when we're thinking that there's this invisible force holding us back, right? Like you can't do anything about that. But that's when shadow work really comes into play because, yes, we all have stuff that is holding us back, but it doesn't have to be the driving force of our life. Our limiting beliefs, our fears, our doubts, they're not what makes us us. It doesn't define us. So this is where shadow work comes into play. So when you become aware that, okay, I have something that's holding me back, I'm having fears, I'm having doubts. Okay, let's tune into that. Not pushing aside. Because what does a normal person do? I feel not okay. Let's push to the side. Let's just stuff it into Pandora's box. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to have anything to do with that. Right. And then they try to move forward and try to just ignore that. That's what makes it then so challenging. That's where it then comes like where it feels like this invisible force that you're fighting against because it's still there. Whether you want to or not, whether you want to be aware of it or not, it still stays there. Like think of the iceberg. You see the top, the piece on top, and there's this big chunk underneath it. Well, that big chunk underneath it is also our fears, our doubts. So here, what makes shadow work so empowering is that for one, you want to acknowledge, yes, I have fears. Yes, I have doubts. Yes, I have stuff that's holding me back. But not letting that define you, not being the victim of all these things that we have learned, that we have embodied, but then becoming aware when something comes up. Okay, I'm feeling not okay right now. I'm trying to do this. I'm feeling not okay. Because this whole feeling of not okay is like the first indicator that something is going on. You're being triggered. One of your shadow aspects is being triggered. So the fears and doubts and all that, that's kind of like shadow aspects. So whenever you're noticing that you're feeling not okay, you want to take a step back and stop. Okay, what am I feeling? What is going on right now? And then when you become aware, okay, I'm feeling a little squeezed. I'm a little scared right now. Okay, never judge. But then tune in, okay, what am I afraid of? Oftentimes we're afraid of the invisible thing, like the what if. if I do this, what is going to happen? The world is going to end, right? Like on a more extended, extreme level here. So when you become aware that, okay, I'm afraid of this. Okay, I'm doubting myself here. Okay, well, where's this coming from? Why am I feeling this? Really working with it. And when it comes to shadow work, it's sometimes giving yourself the opportunity to just feel the feeling, not connecting to the story, because it's the story that makes these fears, these doubts, these past experience so intense. So when it comes to shadow work, it's not about diving into the story. It's about diving into the feeling. Okay, you got fear? Cool. Let's dive into that. What is that fear? Feel the fear with the intention of releasing it, with the intention of letting it go. Because when you give it the acknowledgement, think of a little child that wants to get your attention. What does it do? First, it might tug on your shirt and then like, hey, I want your attention. And they start screaming. They start screaming louder and louder and louder. The more you ignore it, it gets louder and louder. And that's the same with our subconscious fears and doubts and all of that. So when you use shadow work and you tune into that, you sit with that. Like I said, not the story, but just the feeling. You take away the steam. And then you can uncover, okay, well, what am I meant to learn from this? What am I meant to learn from this? Well, maybe I just need to really trust myself. Maybe I need to stop listening to other people and really trust what I feel for myself is important. Okay, cool. Now let's move forward in an empowered way. What do I want instead? If I don't want to hold myself back, if up until this point I allowed my fears to hold me back and I just discovered that I'm actually meant to trust myself, okay, what does it look like? What can I do right now to move forward in a more empowered way? So that's why shadow work is so powerful and so essential when it comes to us overcoming any limitations. Whenever you're feeling stuck in your life, it's because of that subconscious or those unconscious fears and doubts that keep being triggered. Something happens outside of you, you're feeling triggered, you're usually pulling back, you're holding back, or you're not going after what you want because, well, something outside of you told you that this is not safe. Because everything that's happening outside of you is a mirror reflection of what's going on within you. So when you use your outer reality as that mirror to see, okay, well, what's going on within me? So not changing anything outside of you, but looking within, okay, what is going on within me that creates my reality? And then using shadow work to work through that and then become more empowered and move forward, because you always have a choice. You can choose to let your fears run the show, your doubts and all that stuff, that invisible force, or you can become aware of it, like, no, I'm not going to give my fear away, or I'm not going to give my power away to all that. I'm going to work with that. I'm going to uncover the message, the lesson, the gift, and I'm going to move forward in a more empowered way. So yes, if you're not aware of that, having that, being told that you have all these fears, the things that are holding you back, can be very disempowering. But that's why doing this inner work, doing shadow work, is what gives you the power to then create the reality that you want. Because it's up to you to then, okay, let's work through this and let's move forward. Not giving your power away, but taking your power back.
So okay, so shadow work, when you work with people with shadow work, is there something specifically that you're trying to, do you have like a process that you take people through? Because I think when people hear shadow work, there's like it's almost like a spectrum of like what you could do, like what you could, like I think there's like worksheets online or something that you can buy about shadow work, but then you can also talk to a licensed mental health professional about shadow work. So there's like a range of like what it could mean. So what when you work with someone with shadow work, what is it you're trying to, are you trying to get to fears? Are you trying to get to something sort of unconscious? What are you trying to do?
Well, the starting point is that, I mean, honestly, I don't have necessarily a specific process. It's all really divinely guided with each client that I work with, because,
Okay.
each person is different. But like for a framework, I usually tell my clients, okay, start out with what do you want? What kind of life would you love to live? Because it's about consciously creating your life. So it's like, okay, what do you want? What is the version of you look like that has exactly what you want? What is that? Who would you be? Because that gives you the kind of like the starting point, because then you can uncover, okay, what, you're not that yet. Okay, let's look at, okay, what is coming up for you? What are your fears, your doubts around really creating that? What is coming up for you? And then working through that. Now, I have a clearing statement that I teach my clients. So whenever, fears and doubts are coming up, it's like, okay, you want to tune in, you want to clear the energetic charge around it. So I help my clients with a lot of clearing and healing to really help release negative charge, because that's really what's really at the root of things. The shadow, there's like an energetic essence behind that, and that's what we want to clear, the emotional charge behind it, because it's not just about talking things through. And that's why I mentioned earlier, it's about feeling the feeling. Sometimes that's like, it's not about the story, it's about tuning into the feeling of that, releasing the steam of that. But it's really about uncovering, okay, where do you want to be? Where are you right now? What's the gap? What are the fears and the doubts and beliefs that you have that are holding you back? But in us looking at, okay, because the fears and doubts and all the stuff that's holding you back right now, this is not the cause. It's just an effect. The cause is usually something that happened earlier in life, whether it was you were a little kid and your parents said something, or you experienced something that had you ingrain a certain belief that it's not safe to put myself out there, that I can't talk, I need to be silenced, I can't, my message is not important, or what I say is not important, that I'm not lovable, no one wants me, things like that. It's the things that we learned earlier in life. So, but using what's happening right now in your life as that tool, basically, to help you then go deeper. Okay, where is this coming from? So whenever I work with my clients, is we want to uncover, well, where do they want to go? Well, what's really holding them back? What's in their way to get there? And then we dig deeper. Okay, well, where's all that stuff coming from? What are you feeling? What are you believing about yourself? What are your assumptions about yourself, about your life? And then going that way. Now, some people, they think shadow work is like you have to spend a lot of time just kind of digging into your past. I don't believe that. I don't believe that you have to spend years or a month or even weeks or whatnot on just going deep into your past, because oftentimes the stuff doesn't come up until you're actually in motion. Once you're moving forward, once you're doing things that has you step outside of your comfort zone, that's when things come up. Right now, you're not being triggered because you're comfortable. You're not doing anything. Like you sitting here right now, you're not being triggered. So there is no purpose of you sitting there, okay, I'm going to do some shadow work now, I'm going to dive in, like, but you're not being triggered. Nothing is there's no red flags, nothing, right? So it's about, as you're in motion, as you're moving forward, as you're trying to go after your dreams, pay attention when stuff comes up. Then do the work. Because that's when you're being triggered the most. That's when things are coming up. But it's not just like sitting here like, okay, I'm just going to spend a weekend now or a week to just do deep dive into shadow work. It's usually you do shadow work when you're being triggered, when you're feeling not okay. You just want to be aware. Awareness is key. Awareness is the first step, because without awareness, you can't do anything. You're flying blind. You don't know what's happening beneath the surface. So by you just becoming aware, and usually we're being triggered throughout the day, every single day, there's something that happens that makes you feel like, kind of like that irk kind of feeling, that I'm not feeling okay right now. Become aware of that. That's a sign that your shadow aspect, your limited self, is feeling uncomfortable, is being triggered. And here it's not about judging it or pushing it aside. Like, okay, well, I'm feeling okay. What am I feeling right now? Sitting with the discomfort and being just curious about it. Contemplate, well, what am I feeling? That's kind of the process that I teach my clients, and I assist them through this process of, okay, let's move forward. As you're moving forward, using whatever comes up as that tool for growth, for change, for transformation. Then we're doing the inner work to really release that so they can continue moving forward. So that's basically the premise of soul alchemy work.
So you mentioned about becoming aware of your triggers and sort of working on those. I think that's that's important. I think that's a big aspect of it. There's a philosophy of understanding your shadow and using the shadow traits for good, like for for your own benefit or for the benefit of others. Do you get into that at all?
Well, yeah, that's basically the gift within the shadow. Like each shadow, there's an opposite to it. There's the gift. So it's about embodying the shadow. So let's say a shadow would be the fear of being seen. Okay. You can use that to really to empower you, because, okay, I have this fear of being seen. Let's work through that. And then let's embody that. Let's embody the message and the lesson and the gift, because something happened that caused you to be afraid of being seen. So when you're working with that shadow, and you're clearing the negative charge around that that's causing you to be afraid of being seen. You're then taking that, you're embodying that, you're basically transcending that shadow, because then you're like, okay, what am I meant to learn from this? What am I meant to learn from this? And you're taking that. That's how you integrate the shadow. But you want to release the negative charge around that. And then you move forward in an empowered way. So it's working with the shadow, not rejecting the shadow, not resisting the shadow, but okay, speak to me. What do you want me to know? What is important for me to know here? Where is this coming from? Where's the first time that I had an experience that taught me that it's not safe to be seen? Working through that, using the shadow as that tool to help you dig deeper, and then you integrate that. So that's how you can use the shadows in an empowered way, because you're then tapping into the gift of it. You're embodying the gift of that shadow. You're then moving forward in a more empowered way.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the problem is like people. Well, I mean, just the nature of the shadow self. It's like negative traits, and I think that's uncomfortable for a lot of people to sort of explore that or be aware of that, and so it's hard for us to see any sort of positive that may be in that. I feel like.
Yeah, the shadow, it's like you have to dig into the trenches. I mean,
Hmm.
I actually used a tool, Gene Key, that really helped me, that opened my eyes to all of my shadows. And that's actually what also helped me on my journey of really diving deeper into shadow work. And when I uncovered all these shadow aspects within my life, within my profile, it was not comfortable, because I realized like so much, my life made more sense of why I experienced the things I experienced, why I was often triggered, or why I kept attracting certain people in my life. It was because of my shadow aspects. My shadow was playing out in the background most part of my life, right? And it's not comfortable when you're uncovering that. I mean, there were times when I looked at it, I looked at my life, and I realized that it's my shadow. Like, for example, my business. I was struggling tremendously to grow my business, especially my spiritual business. I was struggling so badly. And it was because of my shadow aspects that were really playing out, and they were hindering me. And I was so attached to those that that's what was having a hard time really growing my business. I was really tapped, stuck in, like, one of my shadows is like half-heartedness, like really not fully committing to my path. I was committed, but I wasn't really committed to really trusting myself, to believing in myself, right? So learning all these things, it wasn't comfortable. Even whenever I am being triggered about certain things that had happened, it's not comfortable dealing with that. But I have learned to not reject that, because oftentimes when something happens in our life, what do? We push it aside because we don't want to deal with it. But that's actually only piling up more into that stuff beneath the surface that keeps adding up. And it's like that's what that drives you. That's what has you show up in a certain way, because it's part of you, right? It doesn't go away just because you're pushing it aside. And yes, shadow work, a lot of people don't like it, because what makes shadow work so hard is the resistance to actually tapping into that. It's the resistance to working with the stuff. Because like I said, the stuff is there whether you want to or not, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, it is there. And it is the driving force behind your action, your inactions, how you're showing up, what you believe. It is a driving force. It determines everything. Because yes, it made you who you are, but it's also limiting you. And by you not dealing with that stuff or working through that stuff, it stays there. But when you do shadow work, like I said, what makes it so hard is the resistance to doing the work, not wanting to have to uncover that, not wanting to take responsibility of, yes, I do have fears, I do have stuff beneath the surface. That's what makes it so challenging. But when you embrace shadow work, yes, you still have the discomfort for maybe a day or so, but you're moving through it. Now whenever I'm being triggered, I'm no longer stuck in the situation or in the experience, and I'm no longer the victim of the experience, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down. Okay, not literally sitting down, but I'm just going to work with what's coming to the surface. I'm going to tune in. Okay, I'm going to feel it. What am I feeling? Okay, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. Okay, let's just feel it. Turning up the dial on the feeling. I'm not diving into the story, but just the feeling of it. And then I feel the release. And okay, what was I supposed to learn from this? Cool. I now got the message. Okay, now I move forward. So now I'm flowing through the discomfort. Yes, it's a little bumpy way, but I'm still flowing through it. I know that whenever I'm being triggered, whenever one of my shadows is being triggered, I know there's light at the end of the tunnel. And it's going to be happening very, very quickly. I'll get there. Maybe it takes me a couple of hours. Maybe it takes me a day. Maybe it takes me a couple of days. Versus before, I was stuck in it, in the experience. When something happens, I was stuck in the experience for weeks, a month. And there was even a time when I was stuck in it for years. But it was because I was resisting what was coming up. I was resisting doing the work. Now, since I embrace the shadow work, I'm no longer stuck in it. When something happens, cool. It's more like an inconvenience that I have to deal with, but it no longer determines, how I'm showing up. I'm taking the time, like, okay, I'm going to work through it. But then I come out on the other side more empowered because I did the work. So shadow work only is challenging when you resist doing the work, when you resist diving into or leaning into the discomfort.
You mentioned a couple minutes ago about this being sort of part of your identity. I think this is part of your. I think it is part of your identity, and I think it's also too one of the best ways that you learn about yourself, because knowing what it is that, first of all, the positives, so knowing what inspires you and motivates you, but also what sort of triggers you and maybe sets you back. I think that's just. I don't think you can know yourself without knowing both sides. I think because the law of polarity is definitely a real thing, and there's good in the bad, there's bad in the good, and vice versa. So I don't think you can fully know yourself without knowing this side of you. There's a book called The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and he was a survivor of the Soviet Union concentration camps, and he has a line in there that I refer to sometimes on this podcast. I really like it. It says that the line between good and evil goes directly through the center of every human heart. And so we all have like the tendency to be good or to be bad, to be, evil or to be good. And I think that's something we need to be aware of, because it's easier for us to look on the outside world and disagree with things that go on or disagree with different opinions. But we need to understand that like we all have that sort of, there's that duality between us. And if we know, when we know who, like the things inside of us that maybe we suppress or repress or, express, even unfortunately, sometimes we have that negative side of us. And I think we need to be aware of that, because I think when you know that and when you tap into that shadow self, like for a lot of people, I think the part of the shadow self is arrogance, because it's a mask for insecurity. But I think when you can tap into that, and when you can when you can lead that and not be led by that, I think it can help you be grounded in difficult situations. That's just one example of many examples. But like whatever these traits are that seem negative, I think is absolutely necessary for us to be aware of that, because I think it was Carl Jung said, maybe it wasn't Carl Jung, it was, who was the guy that said, I think it was Carl Jung, he was talking about the shadow self, because he does a lot with he did a lot. Yeah. I think he did a lot with the shadow self. I think he said that until you make the conscious, or until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So for us to, and I understand that we don't want to see ourselves in this light, but for us to at least see the potential of that, like we have to see that in order to, I think, really direct our lives in the way that we want to, because we have to know, like the law, like I said, the law of polarity is a real thing. Good exists and evil exists. There's opposites of everything. And we have to sort of know that, I think, to be balanced and directed, because if not, I think you will call it fate.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's light and dark. There has to be. There's always two sides to. There's two sides to a story too, right? There are
Right.
always two sides to everything. And yeah, you said it right. I mean, like there is that part within us that is that's a shadow, right? We have the light and we have the shadow, and you can't know yourself unless you dive deeper into it. But a lot of people, they don't want to. They don't want to acknowledge that, yes, I have all these traits. Like we're hiding behind these masks. We're hiding behind all these masks because we want to fit in. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to be rejected or outcast or anything like that, right? We hide behind these masks. So we're not our authentic self. So when it comes to this inner work, the shadow work is like acknowledging that yes, I have all these sides. Yes, I am wearing a certain mask because I want to fit in. And it's about peeling back those layers to uncover who are you beneath all that? Because we have been programmed from early on that it's, let's say, making money is hard, that you got to go to college, get a good education in order to become successful. We have all these programming that we have been given from early on. Well, do you truly believe that? Do you truly believe that you have to have an education in order to become successful? Not necessarily, right? Because there are many people that have dropped out of high school and they are millionaires, billionaires, right? So that is not the collective truth. That is a truth that has been embodied or ingrained within us, right? So it's acknowledging all that. It's acknowledging that yes, we have taken on beliefs from other people. That yes, we have our own experience that taught us it's not safe. That I can't do this and all of those different things. It's about acknowledging that because yes, like Carl Jung, like you said, and I going to paraphrase it, is like making the unconscious conscious. It's about diving deeper into what is holding you back, because it determines everything in your life. If you don't yet live the life that you want to live, it doesn't mean that you can't have it, that you're not good enough, that's never going to happen. It just simply is that you're not that person yet. That person that has what you want has different belief sets, shows up differently, believes in themselves, trusts in themselves. Okay, cool. Well, work with that. Look at where don't you trust yourself? Where don't you believe yourself? Where don't you love yourself unconditionally? Get clear on, well, who are you really? Beneath all the programming, beneath all the layers, beneath all of that, who are you really? If you were to pull all that away, who are you? That's what you want to focus on. And shadow work helps you get to the core of who you are. It helps you become the true, authentic version of you. When I think back before I really started, like I had my spiritual awakening back in 2016, who I am now compared to who I was then, completely different person. You probably even would want to talk to me or would invite me to come to your show, because I was a complete different person. I was emotionally shut down. I had gotten hurt so many times. My ex-husband, who brought me here from Germany, left me 2 months later, put me through hell. If it would have been for my son, I wouldn't even be here today no more. And I had to heal all that. I was so emotionally shut down. Like years ago, it was like 2015. My mom was visiting, and I had realized that I was so emotionally shut down because of all that I experienced. I had gotten hurt so many times. So I put this massive wall up. Well, I had to break that down piece by piece. Sometimes I was very resistant. I didn't want to acknowledge that. I remember a coach early on had told me one thing that I almost jumped in his face if he would have been close to me, but it was like virtually. And he was like, everything that's happening in your life, it's happening to your highest and greatest good. In that moment, I was going through a lot, and I'm like, how is this to my highest and greatest good? I was so upset about that. But then over the years, I really learned that he was absolutely right. Everything that I was going through in my life helped me become who I am today. All the challenges I've been through helped me uncover who I am, helped me find my path. And I've gone through a lot of ups and downs. There are times when I hit rock bottom. Like I said, earlier, I almost lost everything a few years ago. But even that, I'm so grateful for all that I experienced, because it helped me learn to surrender. It helped me learn like to open up again. It helped me heal deeply. I healed so much stuff that I was carrying from early on through childhood, through, the stuff with my ex-husband, all of those different things. Was it pleasant in the moment? No. It was painful. It was challenging. I had to look at all these things, but it was necessary. And now I love who I am. I didn't love myself years ago. I didn't like myself. There were times I didn't even want to be alone with myself. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. And because of this work, now I have finally really stepped into my path. I'm creating 2 powerful businesses where I can make an immense impact. I created a life of freedom, of abundance. That's always what I wanted years ago, but at that point, I honestly didn't think I can actually have it. It was more like I would love to, I wish, but it ain't gonna happen. Not for me. I'm not good enough. I'm not deserving. I can't do that. And that's usually the story for a lot of people. Maybe not to that extent, maybe in a more evolved way or different way. But that's usually what happens for every single person. We all have stuff that holds us back. And it's not about ignoring it, pushing it aside. It's like, okay, I acknowledge that. Let's work through that. Let's become aware and be grateful for what you're uncovering, and then do your work to work through that.
So you mentioned earlier about, because I want to touch on this before we close, manifesting. What do you like? Do you help people in that space, like manifesting?
In a way, yes, it's more about the embodiment because it's part of the whole concept of soul alchemy that I'm here to teach. Because manifestation is not just about doing the different processes of visualization and scripting and all of those different things. It's about embodiment. It's really becoming the version of you who already has what you want, tapping into their essence, tapping into their beliefs, showing up as that version now, being that now. That's how you create the life that you want. So manifestation, I don't teach it in the normal sense that you may see, a lot of other gurus or, teachers talk about, but I focus more on the embodiment because all these practices won't help you unless you actually embody the version of you who already has what you want. Working through the stuff as it's coming up, kind of like what I already touched on, right? Because the version of you who has what you want, it already exists. If you can visualize it, if you can see the life that you want to live, then it's already a possibility. If we're talking, timelines, multiple timelines, multiverse, if you want to say it like that, right? There is a version of you already available to you in the quantum field that lives the life that you would love to live, that has the success, the abundance, the love, the freedom, the health, whatever it is that you want. And it's your job to connect to that. The more you connect to that and bring that essence in, bring in that energy, really embody that. In the same time, become aware of when the fears are kicking in, the doubts and things like that, because you have to become that version of you who already has what you want, but you're not that yet. So it's about becoming aware. Well, what is standing in your way? You keep embodying the energy of you, of that version of you who has what you want. And then you work through the stuff that's coming up that's actually in direct conflict of you having what you want. That's the process of soul alchemy. So I teach it in that kind of context because we all can create the life that we want. And here I use a lot of the modalities and teachings of Neville Goddard. I just kind of got into that over the last year or so, and it really has changed my life and my viewpoint of how to really go about a life, how to really create the life that I want. So that's kind of what I'm teaching my clients now to, and also with the whole concept of soul alchemy, because soul alchemy is basically, it's about the inner work, it's about the energetic alignment, it's about really the embodiment, right? All three need to be in coherence, and of course in taking the aligned actions. So that's kind of the process that I teach.
That makes a lot of sense because I think one of the big things about manifestation is, or manifesting anything, is people leave out the most important part, which is doing the work to get the thing. And I think the way you're talking about manifesting is the same way I talk about goals, which is you basically have to become the person who can make that goal happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big part that we leave out a lot of times because you can visualize, you can plan, and you can be clear about what it is, and all those things are very important. But if you don't do the action, if you're not the person who can make the thing happen, that is sort of the biggest piece.
Mm. Now, these practices, they have a place. Like I still do scripting, I still do visualization and meditation, all of these things, but with the purpose of helping me align to the version of me who has what I want. That, so yes, these practices have a place, but it still boils down to you have to embody the version of you who has what you want. You have to be that person now, because everything outside of you is a mirror reflection of what's going on within you. So if you embody the version of you who has what you want, you're showing up in that way, you're in that vibration, that essence, right? You're believing like the person, like the version of you who has what you want. Your outer reality has to adapt. Yes, there's a little delay. It always takes some time. And like one thing that I'm always upset about when it comes to those, these manifestation practice or like the teachings, they don't really tell you that there's still a time delay. They just say, oh, you got to do this practice and then tomorrow you're going to be rich, right? It doesn't work that way. You still have to become that version. You have to then allow the outer world to kind of catch up. And, there's the divine timing at play as well. But, each and every day, the more you embody the version of you who has what you want, you will see the subtle shifts. Opportunities will come your way. People come into your way, into your life. Doors may open. You start looking at life from a different perspective. You feel better. You are more open to really stepping outside of your comfort zone. And it all boils down to it. You got to embody the version of you who has what you want and working through anything that is coming up, but then keep moving forward, taking the actions that will help you get to where you want. And here it's about taking the aligned actions. It's not about just taking any action. It's the action that feels most aligned with the version of you who has what you want. So here you can kind of tap into, okay, the version of me who has exactly what I want. How would that person show up throughout the day? What would they be doing? Would they be doing this or would they be doing that? If you want to do a strategy or a step or an action, you may want to check in what my future version of me who actually has the life that I want, would they be doing that? Or am I just trying to do this out of fear, out of lack, out of desperation? If you're doing anything out of fear, lack, or desperation, then you're not embodying the version of you who already has what you want. The version of you who has what you want knows exactly what to do and does actions out of trust, out of the deep knowing that, okay, I already have it. It's taking on the assumption that you already have it and acting from that place. That's going to be key. So using these practices from affirmations and scripting, visualization, or Neville Goddard talks about SATs, that's like state akin to sleep. Like you do that like right before you go to sleep. You're visualizing and then falling asleep through, as you're visualizing. All these practices, they help you align yourself energetically to the version of you who has what you want. Because if you're not quite sure, well, what would I be feeling? How would I be going about life? What would be the essence? Because it's really about the feeling. And these practices can help you tap into that state of you having what you want. And that's what's going to be helpful. But at the end, it's really still just about the embodiment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for sure. Cause you can't, like, I say all the time that I don't think we achieve goals. I think we become the person who is able to achieve the goals. And then by default, as a byproduct of that, we make those things happen because
Exactly.
you simply cannot, like you hear that you should work one level up, or you should dress one level up from the job that you have, dress to the level of the job that you want, not the job that you have, and work to the level of the job that you want, not the job that you have. Because basically what that means is you become that person and then you get that thing, whatever that goal is, that career. And I think a lot of times we think that if we achieve the goal, then we'll just be that person. But I think the becoming the person definitely has to happen first.
Like
For
Wayne
sure.
Dyer says, like, believe it before you can see it. And that's basically what it boils down to it. You got to believe it first. You got to be it first, and then you will have it.
So do you have website or social media or anything to share?
Yeah. Yeah, my website is Kaysanders, so Kaysanders, where all my stuff is on. And then I'm not really very active on social, but YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel. Also, if you go on YouTube and type in Kaysanders, my channel should come up.
Okay. So I just got a notification about my connection. Are you still with me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know what was I think we're good, but so one thing that I ask everybody before we close, if you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, and it can be from your personal life if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career, what do you think is one of the most valuable, most important lessons you've ever learned?
To not resist what I'm experiencing, but using everything that I'm experiencing as a tool for growth, for transformation. Because like oftentimes, like, I used to resist that, but then once I really embraced that and, taking everything as a tool for that growth, for learning something, that's really what changed a lot for me. So if I could go back or like even just talk to my, previous self, I would say like, don't resist that, really do this work. This is what's going to change your life. It's not going to be pleasant at times, but it's what's going to help you get to where you want to be. And just to really trust in the path, really trust in the path.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I think the way I phrase that is the process. You mentioned the path, but I think the process is. I think the journey is the prize, is what I always say.
Yeah.
And you hear people say trust the process, and going back to embodiment and becoming that person. You don't really. I think a lot of times we want to skip that. We want to skip the journey or the path or the process. We just want the end result. But the magic really happens in the process of getting to that, because you become that. I say all the time, like, it might be something that's intimidating for a lot of people to think about or envision. But if you build a business, or if you build a career, and for some reason, it fails, or you lose it, or whatever it is, well, you still become a person through that process, and the person that you become through that process is more valuable than the thing. And it might be hard to see it in the moment, but maybe that's why you went through that journey, was to become that person for the next step of your personal evolution. So yeah, I think the process is very important.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, the process is not always easy and
Right.
comfortable. It's rarely is. But honestly, if I look back, I wouldn't want it to any other way. Even the things like, someone had asked me something once if I have any regrets. And I was like, at first I was going to say, well, yeah, I have a regret, marrying my ex-husband. But then I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? No, I don't. Because all these things that we go through in our life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the devastating, there are all these pieces that are necessary for us to grow, to find our way, to find our path. So now I'm grateful for all the experience I had, even though in a moment when I was in the midst of it, I was not grateful. It was very painful. But now looking back, I'm like, all these things that I experienced, they had to experience, because if I wouldn't have met my husband, my ex-husband, I wouldn't have had my son. I probably would have had a different child, but I wouldn't have had my son. I may have never ended up here in the States. I would have never had to go through the deep inner healing to uncover my spiritual gifts, my spiritual path, my spiritual journey, and all the things that I experienced because of that. I would have not been able to now do this deep inner work to create this deep inner transformation within people. I would have maybe been just more above the surface. But now, because of all that stuff I experienced, I get to do this, create these deep experiences for people. So, no, I have no regrets. Would I want to go through it again? No. But still, I'm grateful for every challenge, every setback, every person, every heartbreak, everything, because it helped me get to where I'm at today, and I'm kind of loving my life right now.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you you sharing this insight and diving into some of these things. I think this is something that really we can't really stress the importance of this. Of I think basically what we're getting down, the point we're getting down to here is understanding yourself, understanding what limits you. Through things like shadow work, through things like limiting beliefs, understanding that I mean, you can even be limited by the process, by I think you use the word resistance to becoming that person that you need to become to make this goal happen. And I think that's man, if I had to narrow it down to one thing that the people that I talk to and stuff, I think that's probably one of the things is sort of not wanting to go through that process, because you're right. Sometimes it's not always enjoyable. It's not always fun. It's not always, seems like it's monotonous sometimes,
Mm.
but I think, staying consistent with that, I think, is really important. So I do appreciate your insight, your time here today.
Well, thank
If
you.
Thank you. If you can hang out for just a second, I'll explain to you how I upload this thing and all that good stuff. But I do appreciate it.
No, thanks so much for having me. I definitely had a lot of fun.
Thank you. Hey, listen, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you found it useful or beneficial, you can subscribe, follow, interact, and see more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is all social medias: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google and Apple Podcasts. Again, we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.